Hello, I'm Crystal Cameron, and welcome to Political Pulse. We've taken the show on the road this week to the Rio Distribution Center in Waynesboro, where we've caught up with U.S. Senate candidate, Republican Jim Gilmore. Mr. Gilmore, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Crystal.
Clearly a familiar face to many of you, former Attorney General and former Governor as well, and you're in the bid to unseat John Warner. Well, actually not unseat John Warner. He's retiring, but
He's retiring. Take his seat.
Take his seat.
Yeah.
You're up against Democrat Mark Warner. First of all, I want to start off with the economy. Clearly the number one issue on so many minds. People are really struggling to find a balance with those $4 a gallon gas prices. Your solution is to drill here, drill now. Clearly controversial for many politicians. How do you get people to back you up on this plan?
Well, I think the people are backing us up on this plan. I think they know the stress that they're under right now all through the community. They can't really pay these high gas prices and put all this big money into their gas tanks each and every week to get to and from work. They're feeling a great deal of stress they didn't expect, and they know the pressure they're under, and they want to have some action from their Senate candidates and their Senate officials right now. And I say that we drill now, we drill here in the United States, and that's going to allow us to pay less for gasoline, and that's the right policy.
What about other alternatives? You hear a lot about biofuels, building, Mr. McCain wants to see about 30 nuclear plants up and running in the next couple of decades. What about those solutions?
I think they're all good for the additional and overall energy policy that the United States has to have. We should build more refineries. The same people that have been blocking oil exploration have blocked oil refinery development. We need to do nuclear power. The same people who have been blocking nuclear power are the ones that won't let us drill for oil. And you can do other things. You should have refineries, and you should have more renewable energy, and you ought to have opportunities for conservation. We should have an overall long-term balanced program. But I know this. People who are in the community right now who are under stress need help now, and they'll get it if the United States has a decisive policy that says that we drill here in the United States. We drill in ANWR. We can do it consistent with the environment. We drill offshore. We can do that consistent with the environment. And once we bring in that oil and say we're going to, that's going to affect gas prices right now, because people who are investing big money in high prices of barrels are not going to be willing to do that if they know the United States is going to act decisively.
Now, your opponent, Mark Warner, is actually against drilling in ANWR, and we've seen a lot of Democrats against that. What do you say to the environmentalists that say this is so dangerous, we shouldn't be doing this offshore? It's not right offshore that we're doing this, correct?
Well, it's not right offshore, and I do think that your viewers need to be very well aware that Mark Warner says we should not drill in ANWR, and Mark Warner says that we should not be trying to develop oil offshore either, and yet we have to, and you can do it consistent with the environment. And your viewers who are environmentalists, I was a good environmental governor, and you don't have to throw the environment overboard in order to protect the people of the United States and the national interests of the United States. We can do this consistent with the environment. The ANWR drilling can be done now consistent with the environment. ANWR is as big as the state of South Carolina. We're talking about drilling in an area 1/6 the size of Dulles Airport. And as for offshore, it's not right immediately offshore. It's out there on the continental shelf. The Chinese are drilling right now in the Gulf of Mexico offshore. They know the value of this, and we need to get started protecting our own people and our own interests here in the United States and the national interests of this country.
And I think people fail to realize we are drilling in the Gulf of Mexico now. This isn't something new.
It's nothing new. We are already drilling offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. But it is true that the federal government has put almost all the coastal areas off limits to exploration. We need to revoke that. It's time for a change. We can't just keep doing things the same old way we've been doing for the last 30 years, not when people are under the stress they're under right now. And people are hurting out there, and they need some help, and I intend to do it as United States Senator.
Well, as we mentioned, clearly people are seriously struggling with the economic situation right now in the country, but I want to shift gears a little bit to Homeland Security, because so many people aren't thinking about that anymore, and that was clearly the big issue 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago. But if you look at the international situation we're in right now with the threats that are out there, for example, from Iran to North Korea, can Americans really afford to ignore this issue this election cycle?
Well, Crystal, as you know, I chaired the National Commission on Homeland Security and Terrorism for the United States government for 5 years, 3 years before the 9/11 attack and 2 years afterwards. I was the governor of Virginia during the 9/11 attack. I've traveled to Israel and to Pakistan and to Afghanistan and 12 other countries around the world. I'm a United States Army veteran, just as John McCain is a Navy veteran. And we understand these issues, and it is true that there's a great deal of danger right now in the United States. And this is no time for people unexperienced in foreign policy to go into high offices of this land. We need to do something to protect the people of this country. I'm certainly well equipped to do that. But one thing we also know for sure, drilling for oil now is going to give us more energy independence from foreign sources, and that also is going to help the international situation. Terrorists right now feel like they can push this country around because they know that we're subject to many people overseas. We need to change that right now, and I intend to help do that. What's your position on Iraq, where we're talking about foreign policy right now? Well, I know this. We can't simply pull it on some sort of set timetable. I've actually done an op-ed letter when I was in the presidential race that laid all of this out. And I don't think that we necessarily need to be the policeman on every street corner in Iraq. But the surge does seem to be working. We have to keep the national interests of the United States in mind as we go forward on this. And some sort of timetable for a pullout would be very dangerous, both to the men and women who are in uniform there and to this country. And Mark Warner said in his Jefferson-Jackson Day speech last year, we should be pulling out in January of '09. I think that's not responsible, and it's not good policy for this country. I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. A lot of political analysts are saying you face an uphill battle against Mark Warner. In fact, two prominent Republicans in the state leadership have endorsed Mr. Warner, including former Delegate Vincent Callahan Jr. and Senator John Chichester. How do you rally the party behind you, and is this kind of a blow to your campaign, or how do you get up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to rally the Republicans behind me? Listen, I think this is fine. Anybody is entitled to anything that they want to do in these races, but I think that we're going to get strong support from Democrats and from independents and from the Republican Party who believe that the energy issues are paramount. And they know that they want a candidate who's going to care about individual people who are stressed right now in their budgets. They go to the gas station every day. They fill up their tanks every week. They go to and from work. They know they're having challenges with this. They know that since I was governor, tuitions have gone up 51%. They know that we're on the cusp of increased federal taxation, which we should not be doing. And people want to make sure that their public officials are standing for them. And I'm not worried about all these distractions. I'm keeping my eye on the best interests of the people of Virginia and the people of the United States. Speaking of working families here in Virginia, the South Side clearly has probably the most economically deprived area of the state. How do you plan on encouraging job growth in that area for those folks? Well, I think that we can encourage job growth, and I have a long history of doing that. When I ran for governor, I said that we would put in new jobs in Virginia, and we did. During my time as a governor, we put in 250,000 new jobs. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for development in the South Side and in the Southwest Virginia. Coal is a good example for the Southwest Virginia. We have more coal than anybody else in America. In terms of agriculture, and all across the South Side, we know that these high oil prices and gas prices are meaning higher costs for fertilizer, higher costs for feed, higher costs for food costs for people all across the South Side and the Southwest, higher costs to send out poultry and other opportunities for agriculture. These are the challenges that we're facing. And if someone will decisively address this energy issue, I think it's going to mean more jobs and more opportunities for people, not just in the South Side, but all across Virginia. Certainly a lot of untapped potential in that region of our state. And last question for you, sir. How do you expect to, or what is your plan to work across the aisle? We're talking about how, the oil prices are because of the politics in Washington, old politics that have been going on for decades. How do you plan to address that and work across the aisle with the Democrats? The best way to work across the aisle is to get the public behind a proper program. You don't want to work across the aisle and implement bad policy. You want to work across the aisle in order to further the best interests of the people. And that is doable if the people get behind an idea. Remember when I cut the car tax? You remember that? A lot of controversy over that. Oh, no. Oh, not among the population, right. Not among the public. They understood that that was a good and remains a very good program, and Democrats supported that. That notion of cutting the car tax, because the public demanded it, and they said it was the right thing to do. So if you get good policy, it will be supported by Republicans and Democrats. All right, Mr. Gilmore, I know you're busy in the middle of this tour this week. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Crystal. Good luck on your campaign. And thank you for watching Political Pulse. Be sure to log on to NBC29.com every Thursday evening for a new edition.